Welcome to the DIY Honda Garage channel. The Honda CRV from 2011 to 2016 may encounter DTCs P0351, P0352, P0353, and P0354, indicating an ignition coil circuit malfunction. These codes refer to issues with specific ignition coils for each cylinder, namely the number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 cylinders, respectively. The ignition coil is essential for converting battery voltage into the higher voltage needed to ignite the fuel in the engine cylinders. Incorrect functioning can lead to engine misfires, poor performance, and increased emissions. The location of the ignition coils is on the engine cylinder head. Each ignition coil corresponds to a specific cylinder, making diagnostics crucial for pinpointing where the issue lies. Diagnosing these issues usually involves utilizing a Honda Diagnostic System HDS scan tool and examining wiring, fuses, and relays related to the ignition coil circuits. The ignition coils in the Honda CRV from 2011 to 2016 are responsible for generating high voltage to ignite the air-fuel mixture in the engine cylinders. Each ignition coil is specifically tailored to its corresponding cylinder, one for each of the 4 cylinders in the engine. These coils are positioned directly on top of the cylinder head, facilitating efficient operation. When the ignition system fails, as indicated by DTCs P0351 through P0354, the entire combustion process can be compromised, leading to misfires and performance issues. Additionally, the performance fuel injection (PGM) FI system in Honda vehicles relies on accurate signals from the ignition coils to control fuel delivery effectively. Therefore, diagnosing issues related to these coils is essential for maintaining optimal engine performance. The potential causes for DTCs P0351, P0352, P0353, and P0354 primarily center around problems in the ignition coil circuit. A faulty ignition coil may fail to generate sufficient voltage, leading to ignition issues. Short circuits in the ignition coil wiring can also create erroneous signals or drain resources, while open circuits may completely disrupt the connection required for effective coil function. It's vital to rule out these issues through careful testing of each component related to the ignition coil circuit, including wiring, connectors, and the powertrain control module, PCM. Each cause directly impacts the ignition coil's functionality and thus affects overall engine performance. Symptoms associated with DTCs P0351, P0352, P0353, and P0354 typically include engine misfires, which can disrupt smooth operation. Drivers may also notice poor acceleration due to insufficient ignition strength, resulting in a noticeable drop in engine performance. Additionally, the faults may lead to increased emissions as incomplete combustion occurs without the necessary ignition from the coils. These symptoms often trigger the check engine light, prompting the need for diagnostic testing. Monitoring the vehicle's performance can provide crucial insights into whether these specific DTCs are indeed affecting the engine's operation. The first step in troubleshooting DTCs P0351 through P0354 involves verifying the existence of the error. Begin by turning the ignition switch to the on position. 2. This action prepares the vehicle's electrical systems for diagnostics. Use the Honda Diagnostic System HDS to clear any existing diagnostic trouble codes, DTCs, that may be stored. After clearing the codes, start the engine and monitor for the appearance of any pending or confirmed DTCs via the HDS. This step is crucial for establishing whether the issue is persistent or has resolved, enabling you to proceed accordingly with further troubleshooting efforts. For troubleshooting step 2, First, turn the ignition switch to the lock position, 0, to ensure safety while working on the vehicle. Then, proceed to exchange the ignition coil from the cylinder indicated by the DTC with one from a different cylinder. This swap allows you to determine if the ignition coil at the problem cylinder is faulty. After exchanging the coils, restart the engine. Once running, check with the HDS for any pending or confirmed DTCs again. If the DTC appears at the new position of the exchanged coil, the original coil is defective and should be replaced. This methodical approach helps isolate the issue to a specific ignition coil. In this third troubleshooting step, begin again by turning the ignition switch to lock, 0, for safety. Next, inspect fuse number A17, which is a 15-amp fuse located in the underhood fuse/relay box. This specific fuse is responsible for the ignition coil circuit. Use a multimeter or a visual inspection to check the condition of the fuse. If the fuse is blown, it signals a potential short circuit in the ignition coil wiring. If the fuse is intact, then proceed to the next step in the troubleshooting process. Ensuring this fuse is operational is crucial, as a blown fuse would disable power to the ignition coils and may trigger the DTCs. For troubleshooting step 4, the ignition coil relay A needs to be removed from the underhood fuse relay box carefully. This relay plays a vital role in supplying power to the ignition coils. Once removed, test the relay for proper functionality according to the manufacturer's specifications. If the relay is functioning correctly, it should pass all test parameters. If it fails, it must be replaced to restore proper operation to the ignition coil circuit. Ensuring the relay's integrity is essential, as a non-functional relay can lead to power supply issues, resulting in DTCs related to the ignition system. In the fifth troubleshooting step, start by reinstalling the ignition coil relay. Following this, disconnect the ignition coil 3P connector corresponding to the problem cylinder to isolate the circuit. With the connector disconnected, turn the ignition switch to on. 2. Use a multimeter to measure the voltage between test points at the ignition coil 3P connector for the affected cylinder. Test point 1 should be the red wire, while test point 2 is connected to body ground. If battery voltage is present, the IG1 IGN coil wire is functioning properly, allowing you to proceed to the next troubleshooting step. If there's no voltage, it indicates an open in the wire, and further diagnostics are required to locate and repair the issue. For troubleshooting step 6, start by turning the ignition switch to lock, 0, to ensure safety. Next, check for continuity in the PG coil wires by applying a multimeter between the appropriate test points. With the ignition coil 3P connector disconnected, verify continuity between the terminal of the ignition coil connector, black wire, and body ground. This step is crucial for ensuring that there is a proper electrical path through the PG coil wire. If continuity exists, this confirms that the PG coil line is functioning correctly, allowing further investigation to proceed. Conversely, if no continuity is detected, it indicates an open circuit that requires repair to maintain the proper ignition coil operation. In the 7th troubleshooting step, prepare to jump the SCS line using the Honda Diagnostic System, HDS, for diagnostics. Next, disconnect the PCM connector C49P to isolate the PCM from the ignition coil circuit. With the PCM disconnected, check for continuity between body ground and the appropriate PCM connector terminal that corresponds to the problem ignition coil. For instance, if diagnosing DTC P0351, check terminal C25, yellow wire. If continuity is present, it indicates the ignition pulse line is intact, allowing the ignition coil to receive its signal. If continuity is absent, it indicates a short in the wire between the PCM and the ignition coil, necessitating further investigation and repair. For the 8th and final detailed troubleshooting step, the goal is to check for continuity between the ignition coil 3P connector terminal and the corresponding PCM connector terminal. This involves confirming the correct wiring between these components, which is crucial for verifying the functioning of the ignition pulse. If continuity is confirmed, consider updating the PCM software if it is not the latest version. If utilizing an older version, that can lead to performance issues with the ignition system. If continuity is lacking, this indicates a wiring problem that must be repaired for the ignition system to function correctly, ensuring reliable engine performance. Final repair verification is crucial to confirm that all issues have been resolved. Start by turning the ignition switch to the lock position 0 to safely reconnect all previously disconnected connectors. This includes connectors for the ignition coils, PCM, and any other components inspected during the troubleshooting process. Once all connectors are reconnected, turn the ignition switch to the on position 2. Use the Honda Diagnostic System, HDS, to check for any pending or confirmed DTCs. If no DTCs reappear, it confirms that the repairs have been successfully implemented. However, if any trouble codes return, further investigation may be necessary, focusing on the specific DTCs indicated and determining if additional repairs are required. Preventive maintenance is key to ensuring the ignition system remains in optimal condition. Regular inspections of ignition components, including the coils and wiring, can help identify issues before they escalate into DTCs P0351 through P0354. Additionally, always keep the powertrain control module, PCM, updated with the latest software, as outdated programming can lead to performance anomalies. Routine checks of fuses and relays associated with the ignition system also play a vital role in ensuring that all electrical paths remain functional. Preventive measures not only extend the life of the ignition components, but also contribute to the overall reliability and performance of the engine. In summary, diagnosing and resolving DTCs P0351, P0352, P0353, and P0354 involves systematic identification of faulty ignition components, including ignition coils and associated wiring. Following the outlined troubleshooting steps ensures that each potential cause is methodically checked, from testing electrical connections to verifying relay functionality. Importantly, implementing preventive measures can reduce the likelihood of encountering these issues in the future. Regular maintenance and prompt attention to diagnostic trouble codes will lead to enhanced engine performance and longevity. Keeping the ignition system in check is crucial for any Honda CRV owner looking to maintain a reliable vehicle. Please like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.